We're just going to cut around the seed, give it a little twist. Take a look at that peach. All right, I'm going to admit right away that this peach isn't actually from this dwarf peach tree. Now this peach tree is only in its second year, and I would say we're probably at least another year, maybe 2 years away from getting some really nice fruit off of here. However, you know, as we try to grow our fruit food forest as a part of everything else that we're growing here at Guten Yardening, sometimes we just can't wait that long and we have to supplement what we're getting, and that's the case for this. We have some peaches that we purchased from Tree Ripe, which is a company that actually brings a big truck around and we can stand in line, and believe me, there's always a line, and get some of these really high quality peaches. Because, you know, if we're growing what we hope to be the best on our property and we're not there yet, well, we want the best in terms of quality, and these have definitely proven that to be the case. We've been buying them for the last couple of years, again, as we've waited for our own fruit trees to develop. Well, this is going to be tasty here in a couple of days. We have to let them sit out on our table in order to finish ripening. Now, this video is definitely not an advertisement for treeripe.com. However, if you don't yet have the fruit that you need in terms of peaches for your family, or even blueberries, they are an option that deliver quite a few places here in the Midwest, certainly, and throughout the US. So we've had great success with them. Might be something you want to look into. In today's video, I want to take you on a little tour of some of the fruit that's already developing, some of it that's ready for us to harvest, so that you can see where we're headed in terms of expanding the fruit that we're bringing in on our property. One of the challenges that comes with having a small urban space is that you have to be quite selective about the trees that you put in when it comes to fruit trees, in order to make sure that you have enough space for them as they start to develop. Now you can see this is actually a really cool 3-in-1 apple tree, and 2 of the varieties of apples are actually growing in the tree this year. So we have 3 apples. Last year we had 2 apples, so we're growing incrementally. And you can see these have a couple of spots on them, but I'm not worried about that. These are maturing really nicely. And I think just given the fact that we're now heading into our 2nd and 3rd year, we're likely to see more production in the future. But this tree, we're going to be able to keep it to a size that is able to stay out here in our front yard and space. So this is going to grow about 10 feet tall and something around 8 to 10 feet in width, but we'll be able to trim that back as well, so the space it takes up is not really going to be problematic for us. Now that 3-in-1 apple tree, which came from Stark, is not the only apple tree that we have here. We actually have a couple of different apple trees. This is a red columnar apple tree. Now this is really cool. I've featured this in previous videos. In fact, we harvested a couple of really nice red apples off of this last year, but this is not very tall right now, and one of the reasons for that is you can see some of the damage here up top. We're gonna have to trim this back, but the rabbits came along this winter, and just the fact that it was able to survive all the damage all up and down this trunk, even though we had wrapped it. Our snow sat at about 12 inches, and so those rabbits came right up above the snow and just really started munching down on it, but it still survived. And we also have a green columnar apple tree. So these columnar apple trees grow 3 feet wide at the top at its biggest, and about 10 to 12 feet tall on average at its full height. Now this one didn't have as much damage. I'm still not sure if we're going to get fruit from it this year, but it's looking really nice and healthy. This is a really good idea if you have that limited space. I mean, we're right along our property line right here, and we know that this isn't really going to stick out onto the neighbor's property. So that's a really big advantage of these columnar apple trees. That, and the roots don't extend nearly as far as some of your regular sized apple trees. Now, in our experience of trying to grow and also harvest fruit, we've had some losses along the way. This Hosui pear, which is something that we harvested a couple of pears from, sometimes known as the Asian pear, harvested from them last year. I mean, this was cut nearly in half because, I don't know, for whatever reason, over the winter, it did not do so well, even though it's rated for our zone. So we had to cut back the top piece here, but now we're getting that nice new growth. But we've also had pear trees that have died completely. We had a peach tree last year that during a storm, an electrical storm, ended up dying and breaking off in half. So I think sometimes you have to expect some of that loss and not be discouraged. Take a look at this. We got a bee hanging out on here on our nectarine. So we have our nectarine tree here, and this year it has really filled out to a point where I think it looks bigger and better than it ever has before, but we still don't see any fruit yet on this nectarine. And I think that's another thing to keep in mind. So this is a dwarf nectarine. It's not going to get too big. It's going to be about 8 to 10 feet tall, and we can still trim it in, but we're not discouraged by a couple of years lacking fruit, because we know in another year or two this is going to be filled with fruit. And speaking of fruit trees that have developed and we haven't had to worry about at all, this is our flavortop nectarine, and right now at its highest point it's about 8 feet tall. But for us, we do have something really exciting on this nectarine, and I'm going to ask you to take a look and see if you can see it from here. It's kind of, we've got our first fruit here, and at first glance you might think that's the only fruit that's in here, because these are kind of hidden, I think, until they turn color. But as we start to look around, and it's a little hard to see, again, you got to search for them, but there are other nectarines in here, you know, including a group of 3 right here. So this one, this flavortop nectarine, here in its 3rd year, is starting to finally produce some fruit. And one of the other things that's been really interesting to me about picking out the trees that we've chosen for this area is determining which ones are going to perform the best in our zone. And I like the fact that a lot of the places like Fast Growing Trees or Stark Brothers, where we've gotten most of our fruit trees, they're really explicit about which varieties are best for which area. So you want to pick fruit trees that are good for your growing zone. And this 2-in-1 plum, which should give us 2 different varieties of plums, is now producing, right there it is, our very first plum growing on this 2-in-1 plum tree. It's only been 2 days since I filmed that last footage you just saw of our plum, and I came back out to film this again because of how beautiful it is and how quickly it's changing colors. So we can expect this to ripen up really quickly now. And the day after that, it's just fallen onto the ground with just a light touch. So I'm going to pick it up and see just how ripe it is. All right, this is the very first plum we've ever harvested, so we're going to give it a taste and see how it is. Now I have no idea if this is going to be sweet or sour. I'm just going to cut around the seed, give it a little twist, and there we have it. The insides of this look absolutely amazing. All right, let's see how it tastes. Now, just like the Chicago Hardy fig in our earlier video, I am going to save the other half for my family, no matter how hard it is. Here we go. That is so sweet. We just want a couple more from this tree in the future. Wow, that is sweet, soft. I really wasn't sure because this was green when I started this video a couple of days ago, and it ripened up so fast, so perfectly. And yes, I am going to share with the rest of my family. Now, while our peach harvest may be a little bit atypical since, well, it's not yet from our own garden space, we do have some fruit coming in, as you can see on our trees, and our expectation is year over year that's going to increase. And we also supplement our fruit harvest with a ton of berries and grapes that are coming in as well. So I'm going to show you a couple of the things that are already perfectly ripe in our garden. We still have a couple of spots with these summer bearing black raspberries are coming in really nicely. These are sweet. Now we've been working to harness this one in just a little bit. You can actually see that most of the canes on this are prima canes. There are a couple of flora canes or 2nd-year canes where you can again see some of those black raspberries growing. We also took advantage of a couple of places where the cane touched the soil after it stretched over to the other side where we have a trellis, and we moved those a little bit so we could plant them and grow even more of these black raspberries. Because I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, I know that they can be invasive if you don't handle them properly, but we love the taste of these so much we want to grow more. And we're not just growing black raspberries, we also have some of these fall bearing heritage red raspberries. Let me tell you, the flavor on these is exceptional. I don't know, man, it's a real tough choice between this one for me and our golden raspberry. I don't know, something about this raspberry is so sweet and delicious, and the fact that it's a thornless raspberry, so you don't have to worry about getting poked, I don't know, makes this one kind of special. And we're getting plenty off of this as well. Now, we also made the decision to transplant a whole bunch of strawberries that weren't doing very well in our native soil into this green stalk. And so we have more potential berries here. Now this one, these are a little bit late in the season for them. A couple of them will probably fruit a second time. But now that we have them in this setup, I think in the future we should see some really nice strawberry growth out of here. Now this section of our garden is one of my favorites because this is a constant, this time of year, constant picking section when it comes to the different berries that we're interested in. We have our gooseberries right here. If you've never seen them before, looks like I got two here. They're both pretty soft right now, but these are absolutely delicious. Beside our gooseberries, we're also harvesting a bunch of these pink champagne currants, and they just come off so easily. They're really tasty. And then beside that, we have our more traditional black currant. And so we have plenty of fruit out here that's already ready. Now, one of the nice things, and you'll notice, here we go, some of our grapes that are coming in. That's going to be fantastic. But these are all ripening at different times. So we have the ability to eat berries now. We have the ability to eat some of the bigger fruit later on as it matures. And again, year over year, this is going to continue to expand our fruit food forest and give us the opportunity to actually harvest our own peaches, for example, from this tree, and to harvest more of what we want without having to buy outside. All right, take a look at this. 10 minutes of effort, and I've got all of these amazing berries, all of this fruit to eat, and we have plenty more out there for us over the next couple of weeks while we wait for the fruit on the trees to ripen up as well. Now I'm going to end this Atypical Harvest / fruit tour by one of my favorite new fruits, new to us anyway. And this is our Chicago hardy fig. We've already harvested 3 figs from it, and they have been absolutely delicious. And I'm surrounded by honeyberry plants, which, if you've never seen the honeyberry plant, it's a little bit similar to a blueberry, a little bit different taste. We're surrounded by a small fruit forest that's only getting bigger. The trees all picked for a property our size, the smaller selection, and the great variety that's still out there. Even if you don't have a ton of room, there's still a great deal of possibility out there, and you can enjoy, just like we do, some of the fruits that we grow here on our property. Well, we hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.